Okay, so I'm back. This will be my third take time session. Um, I listened to you guys. You told me that I needed to have a microphone because you couldn't hear me, and I do tend to be a fairly quiet talker, so I got a little microphone. So hopefully you can hear me now. So I just want to start this off by not talking about myself for a second and say that I have been crushed, just absolutely crushed, seeing the Taliban banning women from speaking in public, um, and all the other nonsense. And it has actually made me feel very determined to finish this and um, mostly finish this so that I can keep moving on to talking about the other topics that I wanted to talk about on this channel, because I guess it's just honestly, it's like pure spite. Just seeing so many women's voices taken from them has just made me all the more determined to use mine because I can. Um, so yeah, I'll jump back into it where I left off last time, which was I was living in an apartment with my ex-husband that I couldn't leave because I didn't have the keys. I think I told you guys that last time. And um, yeah, it's so hard to like start it up again. So yeah, so the imam, the same one who essayed me, moved into the building to live with my ex-husband's older brother. And there had already been a bunch of drama because while we were engaged, I told you that I had to wait, like the waiting period before my family could marry me to him, but he didn't know that. Well, during that period, because it usually would have been a lot faster, like between the time where he basically um, asked my uncle and the time when we actually got married. But because of that waiting period that he didn't know was happening, um, it was a 3 month period. And so during that 3 months, his older brother got angry because his older brother is older than him. And so was like, you can't get married because you're the younger brother. If anybody should be asking for her hand, it's me. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly what happened with this. I don't know if he actually came and said this to my uncle or if he told it to his brother and then my brother told my uncle. I just know that it was like a big problem, and even other people from the community were like weighing in and they were upset about it. And that doesn't actually have anything to do with religion. I do have to make sure to separate when things are cultural and not religious, because I'm going to criticize religion quite a bit, um, but I'm not going to criticize anything unfairly. And that older brother problem is a cultural problem, not a religious one. Anyway, it didn't matter because they just wanted to get me married for the reasons that I already told you about. So they weren't going to, switch anything or whatever. Um, so, but him and his brother had apartments in the same building. So when we moved into the building, it was already awkward. His brother was really weird at the wedding too. I remember that. And I was always like a little bit afraid of his brother. He never said anything like mean to me or did anything to me. I guess because of that whole like drama, and he used to tell me stories about jinns a lot because he had this ring that he would wear on his finger, and it was like there was a part inside the ring that was like cracked, and he used to tell me this whole story about how the ring had saved him from a jinn, and that's how it got cracked, and blah 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 blah. So anyway, so the imam moves into our building with his older brother. And now they, like one of the first things that happens is my ex-husband's like, oh, this is so great because your family and you have this great relationship with Syed. And so, we're going to invite his brother and the imam. I'm sorry, it's really weird to call him the imam because I'm not used to calling him that, but I'm not, obviously, I can't say who it is for my safety. So, um, if I sound weird when I'm just like the imam, it's because I'm not, it's like an awkward thing for me to say. I'm not used to referring to him like that, or I'm not used to calling his brother like his brother, but like just for the sake of trying to like tell my story and be responsible with like the other people involved. Not all of them deserve it, but yeah. So that's why I'm doing that. I'm sorry. I wasn't really planning on making this video today, and then I just decided to do it, like I said, out of spite, just because I'm so angry at the Taliban just forbidding women from speaking. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to finish up my video. But every time that I start doing this, I start getting really anxious and feel really awkward. And I'm just pushing through that. So, you know what? Maybe these videos are the videos that like will just get me to like say these things out loud for the first time in my life. And then maybe someday I'll like be able to do some kind of like interview with somebody who like asks me questions, and then I can like answer the questions, and it'll be easier than just me sitting here talking to nobody and trying to like remember and think and be nervous and all this stuff. But anyway, I have to start somewhere. So this is where I'm starting. So yeah, so my ex-husband wanted me to not me, but he wanted to invite them to our apartment for dinner, and of course that made me cooking, whatever. And when he said that, and here's the other thing, I am ADHD, like I am ADHD and autistic, and I just found this out within the last 2 to 3 years, to almost 3 years. So as an undiagnosed child, I was still a child when all this was happening, and not knowing these things about myself, I've always had these autistic traits, these neurodivergent traits of like not having a filter, being very blunt, being very focused on honesty, and not being able to like go along with things if they don't make sense, if they're not sincere. Um, kind of like being very shy, very socially awkward, like just so many things that affected. Like as I look back on all this, I just think to myself like how much being neurodivergent probably affected this entire situation because of the way that I am and the way that I was, always have been, but not knowing it at the time and nobody else knowing it. So not having any kind of like understanding or accommodation to like the way that my brain works and the way that I am. Um, so on the one hand, at the time, I was very quiet, very shy, very rule following, very religious, and very like compared to the other girls my age who were my friends in the community in the masjid at the time, I wasn't trying to break any rules because I believed in these things. And a lot of the other girls were trying to break like little rules, like stupid little things. But my brain does not work like that. I only break rules if I think the rule doesn't make sense. But as long as I think that something makes sense, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter if anybody's watching or not watching, or if I'm alone or I'm in public. Like it just doesn't matter because my brain is not wired that way. So I think that with that, what it gave off was an impression that I was this super religious, super rule following, very quiet, very awkward young girl, and that I would be really easily controlled. And then the reality, and this is just me speculating, I can't say what my ex-husband or any of the other adults at the time did or did not think for sure. This is just me trying to work things out in my head and trying to make sense of or apply like looking back, kind of reasoning to things to just try and like work out everything that happened and try and understand it. Um, and while all of that would be true, but then the other side to like a neurodivergent person is we are like, for example, like I mentioned before, like um, he was so upset and so angry, like when I wouldn't do the paperwork for him to get like welfare benefits from the state because it it required me to lie and say that he wasn't working and he was working, and I can't do that. I couldn't do that. And um, but I think that because of how quiet I was and how shy I was and how I followed all the rules that I believed were correct that were like from the religion, he just thought that I would be like easy to manipulate. He didn't understand that I was doing all these things because I believed, like I really believed this is what God wanted me to do. So when he like would tell me to do things that were against religion, but that were like for culture or for him or something, but I already knew this is not correct Islamically, I wouldn't do it. And I would like take I at a point like I knew what the um let's say punishment was going to be, and I didn't, not that I didn't care, but I still wouldn't do something that I thought was incorrect, right? And that's the autism. But I didn't know that at the time. Like I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't know I was neurodivergent. Nobody did until, years later. So, um anyway, another thing is I have a really hard time hiding my like I can't really like put on a face like I guess how I'm feeling kind of shows, and I'm not so great at hiding it. I might not say anything, but I've always been told that like whatever I think is kind of like all over my face. Um like inappropriate facial whatever. But I don't think it's inappropriate at all. I think it's authentic, and I'm just not like filtered is all. But anyway, so he wanted me to cook for them, his brother and the imam, and my face gave me away. I didn't say anything, but my face, I think I probably looked either, I was to guess, horrified or maybe disgusted. And he freaked out because he thought I was being lazy and just like not wanting to cook. But meanwhile, like I actually actually love cooking. I always loved cooking, and I love cooking for people, just not that person. So yeah, that was like a whole thing, and they ended up coming to dinner, and I shouldn't have to be there normally. I should just like serve the food, and then it's men, leave them to eat in the living room and go in the bedroom, come back when they're done, take the plates away, make the tea, serve the tea, go back in the bedroom, um, come back and take the tea away and go back in the bedroom. Like that's what should have happened because men. But the imam, like after I put all the food down and I went to go in the bedroom, was like, oh no, we're going to talk about Islam. And he told my ex-husband, oh, you shouldn't have her go in the bedroom because we're going to talk about religion here, and it's like, like a blessing that he's here, and I shouldn't have to miss his, his Islamic wisdom or whatever. And my ex-husband didn't, ew, um, did not like that, but it was coming from him who is older and has more status, so I had to stay. And it was just awful. Like I remember that dinner so much because it was horrible, but also because after it was over and they left, um my ex-husband was so mad at me for being there, and just he was just being awful. And when we fell asleep that night, I had a dream. I was having a lot of nightmares in this point in time in my life, like a lot of nightmares. And I dreamed that the imam in my dream, the imam was like a ghost or a jinn or something, and he was in the closet in the bedroom and like came out of the closet and was like hovering over the bed, and I wanted to scream but I couldn't scream. I still remember this dream like all these years later, and I woke up out of the dream and I was screaming and I was so upset. And I just like when you wake up out of a dream and it's like you don't even like you're awake, but like in like for a few minutes, like the dream was so intense that you just feel confused, like what's real, like is this real, was the dream real, like yeah, you don't know what's going on. It was like that. And in that few minutes right after waking from the dream, like he was like, what's going on, why are you always waking up screaming, and he was like yelling at me and pressuring me. And I did one of the stupidest things I've ever done in my entire life, and I told him the truth. I told him that I had been essayed by the imam, that my family knew about it, and that they made me go back to Islamic school and then made me get married to him. And that was hands down the stupidest one of the stupidest things I have ever done in my life, because from that point on he just hated me. And I don't know why he didn't divorce me. Honestly, I don't know why he didn't just divorce me and just like send me back to my family, but he didn't. Um he didn't. And I think maybe it was out of spite because his brother had wanted to marry me. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but he was so awful to me after that. And like the physical violence started to be worse and more frequent, um and he would stay out for longer. Like he would leave and come back like 2 days later or 3 days later, like. And I just never really knew when he was going to come back. I never knew what was going on, like. And I would, whenever he was there, he was always like yelling at me and being really physical, and I would cry a lot, and that would make him really angry. And one time he had been gone for a while and he came back and he was getting ready to leave again. And I um I I didn't want him to leave, because I was. It's not like I was a fan of him and like, oh, I want you to stay with me, but I was by myself, like I was alone in this house. It's like being in solitary confinement, like, and there's nothing to do. Remember, like I wasn't like we didn't have a TV, we didn't have a radio. He took the phone with him when he would leave, so all I had was books. And his whole thing was like, well, you should just stay in prayer. You should just stay in prayer. Like, okay, we pray 5 times a day, and we're Shia, so that was 5 prayers. I broken into 3. So it's 1 time in the morning, and then 2 in the afternoon, and 2 at night, and they're prayed together. That leaves a whole lot of time in my day that I have nothing to do. So I was lonely, and I don't remember why, but for some reason that particular night he was like, okay, come with me, like get your abaya. And abaya is like a black um piece of cloth that goes over your head like this, and it's open in the front, and it hangs all the way down to your ankles, and then you hold it closed like this from the inside under your chin, or you can pull it like this over half your face. um so I grabbed my abaya, and we went and got in the car, and of course I had to sit in the back seat because I wasn't allowed to sit in the front seat next to him like a normal person. And this is not religious either. This one is also cultural. So I will make sure to do my best to point out when things are culture and not religion. So he went to one of his friend's house, and we got there, and I went to get out of the car, and it was nighttime. It was like, I don't know what time it was, but it was dark, it was cold, it was winter, it was nighttime. And he was like, no, it's only men inside, so you have to wait in the car. And I was like, oh, okay, uh like for how long? Like, and he got mad at me for asking that. Then he went inside, And I remember just being there in that car at night in the dark in the parking lot by myself, and I was scared for hours. It must have been at least 2 3 hours. I was just sitting there and I was freezing cold, and I was just thinking to myself, like, why did you say to, like, why did you ask him how long? Why did you ask him how long? Because I knew that he was probably not coming out because I said how long, and now he's trying to teach me a lesson that, I don't set the rules, I don't question him. He's the man, he's the husband, he's in charge, blah blah blah. Like, he was very, very stuck on this way of thinking. So after like 2 3 hours, his friend, who was older than he was, came out of the house with a cup of tea for me, and like, he knocked on the car window, and I opened the door and he handed me this tea, and I remember I just started crying, and he was like very nice to me, and he was like, don't cry, sister, like, we're going to talk to him, we're going to talk to him. And I didn't say anything, like, I didn't say a word, like, and I didn't mean to cry, but it was just, you know people weren't like, I wasn't around anybody but him really at that time, and I wasn't getting like very much kindness. So like, when his friend brought me that tea, it was just this overwhelming thing for me. So yeah, that was one thing that I remember. And I don't think I said this, but when we got married, like when we first got married, and the very first time that I was in the apartment, like on our wedding night, when we got there after everybody left, because everybody takes you to the place, like all your friends and family, like bring you to the guy's apartment, and then they all leave and leave you there. So I remember the very first time he shut the door, like everybody left, and he like shut the door, and he told me that his father, in Arabic, you don't call somebody by their name. You call them by the um, name of their oldest son. So, like, if your name is Hassan, you'll be called Hassan all the way up until you have a son. And then when you have a son, like, let's say your son's name is Ali, then you'll be Abu Ali. You won't be Hassan anymore. You'll be father of Ali. Um, and that's how, like, everybody's known. It's like father of or mother of, and then the oldest son's name. So when he shut the door the first time, he told me that his father wasn't known as Abu, his brother's name. He was known as uh, the father of the lock, because when his mother was brought to his father's house on their wedding day, he locked her in, and that nobody in the neighborhood had seen her since that day. She had like 9 kids, and she didn't even go, like, she wasn't even allowed to go to the hospital. Like, literally nobody saw this woman from the day that she was locked inside of my ex-husband's father's house, which became her house. And I used to think about her a lot. I used to think about her a lot because we would call. This is at the time when you had to have like a phone card, and you would buy a phone card, and then you would like call and get connected to like talk to family overseas. But like, this is before we had like WhatsApp or whatever. It was a big deal to call like once a month. Um and it was weird when he told me that, because he didn't say like, and I'm going to be known the same, or like, and you're not going to leave either. He just like plopped this little factoid on me, and I I was just like, what? I mean, my aunt worked, I worked. My uncle wasn't like that. Like, he didn't have a problem with us working or being outside. School wasn't really encouraged. Granted, we, Islamic school was what we did, but my uncle was not like controlling or um I mean, he was just nothing like my ex-husband. He really wasn't, or at least that's what I thought for a very long time. But even with that, which I'll get into later, he still was nothing like my ex-husband. He was a good person in a lot of ways. Um, anyway, yeah. So after that night when I had the dream and I made the mistake of telling the truth, probably because I'm neurodivergent, we have a really hard time not telling the truth. I have a really hard time not telling the truth. And I was too young to like fully like grasp the consequences of I'm sorry, I'm like holding this mic and it's awkward because I tried to pin it, but it didn't really stay. Um, I didn't really grasp like I didn't understand how much worse that was going to make it, like, and I should have I should have I understood everything involved in why it got worse, but I don't know, like I think at that point in time I was just so traumatized, and like that dinner, like his brother and the stupid guy coming, and like it was just too much for me, and I just broke down. And when he was yelling at me, and that's the other thing, is like I hate being yelled at. I hate being yelled at. Um so yeah, I mean it just was, it wasn't good. And my mother um came to visit me, and I found out from my half sister that my mother had like given me like lingerie, like at the henna, at the like, I guess you would call it like a bridal shower, like pre-wedding party. And I didn't even know this. Like I actually don't remember any of that. I only know it happened because I've seen photos, but I don't have any. I don't actually have any memory of that. Um, and my half sister, like, who I didn't, she was like a baby at the time, but I didn't start talking to her until like she was an adult and I was adult. And she found me and we talked, like, and she told me that she had seen those pictures too, like, and I didn't even know that. Like I didn't even realize that my mother was at the bridal shower or at the wedding. Like, I don't know. But she was, which is just like an added layer of messed up, that it wasn't just like one side of my family that was like okay with this. It was both sides. So, yeah. Um um yep, I think that's going to be the end of this video. Sorry, uh this is why I need somebody to just like ask me questions so they could like speed this along, because I go in circles when I talk and I get upset and I get flustered and awkward and all the things. So, I think that's what I'm going to try and do. I think that I am going to try and find somebody, even if it's just like one of my friends, who would be willing, like I can write down a bunch of questions beforehand and then they can just like ask me the questions and try and keep me on track. And I think that I will be back when I can do that, or when I find somebody who I can just go on their channel, because this doesn't feel, I'm going to upload it because I made it, but and nobody really watches my videos anyway, which is kind of great actually. um but yeah, I really just like, out of spite for all the women whose voices are being taken away, like I'm so determined to finally tell what happened, how it was in my community, and not just for me, but like there was a lot of other girls in my community, and I'm the only one who left. All those other girls were married off. They were all married off to grown men. And, like they might not even know that their life isn't how everything is just supposed to go. I just thought that's how it was supposed to be. It's taken me years and therapy and so much deconstruction work to even get to a point where I'm like fully like comprehending like not only like how traumatic all of this was, but even to like find anger to be mad about it and be like, no, like I'm not gonna be quiet and just protect everybody else. Like I'm not gonna protect the abusers anymore. Like I'm going to speak, I'm going to say it, I'm going to tell my story and heal in loudness. And I'm not gonna just like crawl off in a corner and die in silence. Like, no. Anyway, I know I'm just tangenting. So, okay. Thank you. You guys are awesome if you made it to the end of this. And I hope that the microphone helped. And till next time.